Good morning, beautiful people. Sanbanani and herzlich willkommen this morning.
Hi, Bo.
Hi, Bo. Hi, Bo. What?
Herzlich willkommen. Your multiple languages early on a Thursday morning.
Bienvenue tout le monde. Oui. How are you, Bums?
Oh, baby, it's a Thursday morning in the fastest January in recorded history. It's
Big
like
time.
the end of the month.
But I love it. I love how quickly this month has gone. It means it's going to be a busy year. We're going to get shit done. We're going to move forward. I like it. I'm very excited about 2024. In fact, I'm more excited about this year. I can honestly tell you, looking back, and we won't get into this too much because it's not that interesting to anyone who isn't me, but I reckon like somewhere in the last 2.5 years, maybe even 3, I've struggled to kind of get over the finish line on some things. I've just felt that. I don't know if it's true. That's just how I felt, right?
Okay.
So, for whatever reason, I think I broke the hoodoo last year at the end of the year. And I'm feeling really good about things. So, as proper gender says, it is time for the cacophony of jabberings. Yes. Yes.
Woo, it is a lot, Baba. It is a lot. Snipes is talking about Bafana in the comments.
It says Bafana qualified G and us Phumi. You were so unpatriotic last Thursday. You even compared them to the South African politicians.
Yeah.
Wow. Look,
Was
even
I
a
though?
broken clock is right twice a day, right?
Listen, I'm still not convinced.
No. I was in Cape Town yesterday for a range of meetings and things. Lots of exciting stuff happening on the Cliff Central front, which I'll tell you about over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a bit longer. We're doing some big stuff, and I'm very excited about what this year holds in that front too. But it seems that everybody is, after our discussion on Tuesday with Franz Cronier on Democracy 101, everybody's talking about politics this week. And I managed to bump into and secure an interview. I hope it's going to happen next Thursday with Gavin McKenzie, who we've been trying to get on the Burning Platform for a while now. And he will come into studio next week, which I'm excited about because I think it's well overdue to talk to him. And Gayton sees himself as a kind of a kingmaker, and he may just be, hey? He's an unknown, untested force in places like the Western Cape, and he reckons he'll do well.
I was in a meeting yesterday or the day before, and somebody in the meeting said, we see all of these like opposition party people, and everyone's getting 15%. Everyone.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't know.
What are you talking about? He says, no, everybody is very confident that they're getting 15%. So I think that's what everybody's internal polling is telling them, I suppose.
It's hardly worth celebrating, right? 15%.
But that would make you a kingmaker.
15% would make you a very powerful player. It would make you more powerful than the EFF in South Africa.
It's sitting at about 11.
Sorry,
are you drinking?
choking in water, but I was choking.
Oh.
I think Gayton is thinking he can get somewhere around 10, but I don't know if that's possible. I don't know. I mean, who knows? So that's why we got France on this week. And if you missed it for whatever reason, on Tuesday, you can go and listen to it on cliffcentral.com. Just look for Democracy 101 and France. Yeah.
Always very interesting. Always very interesting, France's views. And they do lots of polling as well. So
plenty.
They're also people to look at in terms of what they are calling.
And they also what they do is qualitative. polling. It's
Mm.
not just, they don't just go out there and ask a bunch of questions of a random group of people. They very carefully select a demographically representative group of people, and then they break it down by province and everything else. So it's worth having a look at. So somebody says here, um, is Gareth running for president? Well, absolutely not, Ricky, because there are already 200,000 people running for president. And what difference would I make that is more important than the difference we make here on this show? Phumi and I will not be running for president because we have this show to do, and this is more important to us. In fact, I think in so many ways, what we need heading up to this election is more independent journalists, stroke broadcasters, stroke information people on online in particular, because that's the place where you already find the free people who can speak freely and tell you what they think, and hopefully get the thoughts of our politicians and hold their feet to the fire. So no, not a chance I'll be doing that. Don't you worry. Nothing's
So
changed on that front.
there's an account I follow on one of the social media platforms called So We Vote.
Mm,
And they had posted a thing a couple of days ago last week when when the matric results came out, about the 800,000 odd young people who sat for the matric exam,
yeah,
and that if all those young people voted in one particular way, they would be the fourth most powerful party.
that's phenomenal.
Just the
800,000.
matrics.
And that's just 800,000 people.
Just the matriculants from
Wow.
2023.
If you
But so
genuinely feel, if you feel like you're not going to make a difference in this election, you are so wrong.
but what was really funny about that, you know the story of Chinese matches, right?
Mm,
Billion people in China. If you sold a box of matches to every one of them
mhm.
for $1, you'd be a
You'd be a
billionaire.
billionaire.
Which is a little bit like that calculation, right? In one respect. But it's a very good insight for all these people vying to be a kingmaker. Is
Listen,
that
the person we haven't ever spoken about, maybe we should save this for the burning platform later on, but I do want us to talk about this Roger Jardine, because that thing has gone out like a damp squib and it launched like nobody cared. And I wonder what they're thinking in that grouping. Because I know these, there's like a group of powerful business people in this country who thought that they could just thrust a candidate upon us and we would accept it just because it was backed by big business. And really, I think people have just, like, given them the brown eye. Like, nobody's
Hmm.
right? Don't you think? No one's interested.
Backed by big business. Now, where
Yeah.
have we heard this before?
Mhm. And where has it not worked before? Hmm?
Hmm. Where
Anyway.
have we heard this before?
Do more parties and independent candidates take votes from the ANC, or are they just squabbling over opposition constituents? That's what JP wants to know. What do you think, Pums?
Well, some may take voters, but I think this is another thing we were talking about in the office
Mm,
about brand loyalty, right? That you're
yeah.
more likely to get divorced than change your brand of tomato sauce. That you
Is that true? You're more likely to get divorced than to change your brand of tomato sauce. Really?
and
Wow.
more likely to do it, more likely to change your religion than your political party.
You're joking.
And I'm trying to
Wow.
remember the soccer. There's also one about a soccer team, but
Mhm.
and we've seen that, right? We have seen people who are unmovable from wherever they sit, who they vote for, and but there are people who can change their minds. So best bet though is there are many as in the 800,000 young people who sat for their matric. Those kids are all first time voters this year. Those people are votes that
Uh,
are up. those people are votes that are available
Well,
for
I I
independence,
I
for
think all of this points to an enormous amount of impetus and strength behind those who will actually be counted at the polls this year. Again, a good thing. If we're going to say that democracy means a damn thing to us, and we hope it does, it's a hell of a lot better than all the other systems, as Churchill always said, then let's get on with it. So I don't want us to start politics. I mean, we've already spent 15 minutes doing.
Ricky Lowe says your backdrop looks very presidential.
It's just my study. I have no ambitions for the presidency, and those flags are not national flags. I promise you, they're just family things. So, in fact, okay, so that is my mother's family's coat of arms on that flag. Now, I don't fly it from the fucking rooftops, so it's got to go somewhere, right? And then on this side is my dad's, and then in the middle is a copy of a Van Dyke with Charles the First in it, who is my, I don't know, 12, 12 or 13 greats grandfather. And you know what's interesting about him, Pumi?
Yep. Tell me all about it. That's hectic. Okay, I want to talk about family crests just now. But yes, tell
Okay,
me
so
about Charles.
Charles the First was this tall at the beginning of his reign,
Oh my God.
and he was this tall at the end of his reign. You know why?
How long did he reign? Did he
Uh,
get beheaded, Gareth? Did he get beheaded?
exactly what happened to him. He got beheaded, got his head cut off. That guy in that picture there, he got his head cut off. So luckily, he managed to have some kids before that happened. So
Sure.
otherwise,
Because
I wouldn't
where
be
would
here.
we be? Where would we
I
be
would.
without you?
There wouldn't be me, but everything else would be fine. I'm sure.
So, tell. I don't know if I've no, I don't think I've ever heard you talk about how you came to the coat of arms and to make them. So the is it a family crest coat of arms on that on those flags?
Yeah. So
And how
those.
did you like figure them out?
So you inherit a coat of arms from either.
Hmm.
I'm the eldest son of my parents. So what I do is I quarter the arms, which means I take my father's ones in the first and fourth quarter, and I take my mother's in the second and third quarter. So they look, when you put mine together, then it looks a bit like this. Let me show you quickly. It looks like this here. There. See? So,
Mm.
um, they were my mothers were registered about, I don't know, 25 years ago or something, and my dad's were inherited, but they're a bit older. And then my brothers look slightly different to this one because he's got a little crescent moon in the middle as the second son, and my
Hmm.
sister has a little heart in the middle, which is called a cur in heraldic language. So you would describe them. For example, if I had to describe my dad's arms, this is going to sound like you talk about language. We opened the show with a different language this morning. So if I had to describe my my dad's coat of arms in what they call blazon or heraldic language, do you really care about this, or must I
I
leave it alone?
absolutely do.
Okay, so it looks like this. That's the first and fourth quarter over there, right? So you would define that as follows. You would say,
Okay.
um, per pale wavy on the dexter, 3 lions passant gardant. Sorry, ghouls, 3 lions passant gardant, or on the sinister, a sprig of oak leaf proper. Overall, a chief sable charged with a leopard passant gardant proper. That's that first part.
But
And then
but what does it mean?
so that means, so what it is it's just language for describing what you see. So that means the coat of arms is divided
Mm,
by
mm, mm.
a wavy, per pale means vertically.
Mhm.
Um, on the dexter, which is on the left-hand side as you look at it, or if you're wearing it, it means on the right-hand side. So you remember the reason we have heraldry is because this is a way to identify people on the battlefield in the Middle Ages.
Mm,
So
mm.
you'd be able to figure out who was on your side and who wasn't. So you wouldn't kill your own allies,
People.
and you would know which of the enemy were worth capturing, because if you had a coat of arms, you were valuable. You were probably in the nobility, you probably had land, you probably had money. So capturing you would be a worthwhile thing. So in some ways it was good, in some ways it was bad. Um, and your own men would know to rally around you and to follow your instructions because you were wearing this coat of arms. So
So you said
what
you
makes
said
it,
your
what makes
mom's was yeah, yeah.
yes,
What
no, no, go
makes?
on.
So you
So what
said
makes
your mom's ones were registered 25 years ago. 20,
yeah,
yeah, you said
so
25.
these are registered with the College of Arms in South Africa, and anyone in South Africa who wants to have a coat of arms can have them. You don't have to be of any kind of fancy descent, so anybody can. And in fact, I remember speaking to the State Herald, um, who's a very interesting guy. We've had him on
I
the show before.
remember that. I
Yeah.
remember that.
We had him on Cliff Central not so long ago. He's actually written, he's fascinating. We must get him back on the show at some point. He's written 2 books, but they're illustrated books that he illustrated himself, kids' books, which are really cool. But he told me that when Madiba got some international award of knighthood or something, they had to develop a coat of arms for him because it had to go up in some chapel in the UK or whatever. But he has a coat of
Goodness.
arms. In fact, Mandla, who calls himself now,
I was
uh,
going to ask if you think Manda looks after it.
well, you don't have to look after it. It's there whether you like it or not. Zwelibilile Mandla Sizwe Mandela, who's now the chief of Amvezo in the
Mm,
Eastern Cape. So he has a coat of arms. You know, most presidents have to have them because what it is, it's a seal. So this is actually my signature. I don't have to write my name. I can sign a document with this thing because it's only for me. That's, as I said to you, even though my brother and sister would technically have the same one, they have
mm,
a slight what they call a differencing. So that
mm, mm,
that will show that it's actually them. So if someone sees a document with this on, they know it's from me, and they can look up that it's
mm,
from me. But anyone in South Africa can
mm.
go and register a coat of arms with the College of Arms here, not the College of Arms, sorry, the State Herald. Um, Bureau of Heraldry is what they are. They're in Pretoria. And you pay a certain amount of money because then they issue you a beautifully drawn or illustrated or painted achievement of arms, is
Oh,
what they call it,
oh, wow.
with the seal on it from the State Herald. It's an official government document. It comes out in the government gazette so that everybody in the country supposedly knows about it, like a law, because it's a legal document, right?
Mm,
So that's quite cool. I think it's quite
that is
special.
that is
You know,
cool.
you're in the book. I mean, I've got not in this room, but somewhere else here. Someone's published a book of all the extant South African coats of arms, and it's interesting to see which families are in there. And
Mm,
first of all, they're not all white, as many people would think. There are lots of black families who have these, especially black families who are of royal descent here in this country. They all have them, and it's cool to see this stuff. And anyone can get one. You don't have to be special, in inverted commas. So it's a cool thing to do.
it is. Sounds cool.
Yeah. And then you
Yeah.
wanted to ask something about my mom and her
No, I
family. What was
wanted
that?
to ask about the registration. That's what you
Oh,
were
right.
just
So you
responding
could
to.
get yours. So if you get yours done for, for your son, for example, then it's something that he inherits. And I think quite a valuable, cool thing that he inherits. It's not just like a sofa or a fridge.
They don't make those to last anymore. So for a fridge. It's
No.
not the same as when they made them in the 60s and the 70s. Now you have to get a new one every couple of years.
Yeah. No, it's listen, I've thought about it the other day. I've used the same microwave all my adult life and it hasn't let me down, touch wood, so far.
Oof,
That's quite
oof.
good, huh?
That is
A lot of
yay,
time for a
yay,
microwave. Good.
yay. That's like microwave years. Do you think that's like 100 years?
Yeah. Hey, can we
Microwave years.
talk can we talk about Kelly Kumalo and Senzo Miyiwa? Please, can we talk about that?
Baba, yay. That yes. Okay. What did you read? What did
All right, so
you read?
here's the story in the news this morning. An affidavit by the lead investigator in the Senzimiwa murder trials revealed two of the accused have confirmed to police that Kelly Khumalo was the mastermind who hired them to murder the Bafana Bafana captain. Brigadier Bongani Ginida has been testifying in the trial within a trial to determine the admissibility of confession statements by the two accused. 5 men are being tried for the 2014 murder of the football star at Khumalo's home, who was his girlfriend at the time. So
Mm.
this is like story from two of the police officers, which is pretty
No,
damning. But
from one of
not
the
the two.
police officers about the the two accused.
Yeah,
Yay, yay,
yeah,
yay, yay, yay.
correct. Sorry, that's quite right. Sorry.
Listen, first off, my theory, I'm not moving from my theory. I don't
Hmm.
believe any of this stuff. I think
Don't you?
I think this Kelly Kumalo part of the story is just to add more confusion and hopefully to 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 throw this case. Siri is talking to me. Siri wants to be part of this conversation too, but she
Oh,
doesn't know what that means. um,
jeez.
I, listen, this, you know, it makes me so mad every time a new twist in this story happens,
Hmm.
because it's one more kink in making it an even crazier story, and at the end of the day, n- the the right person will not be found guilty, and n- eh, and this poor Senzo
What do you
Meyiwa
mean? I mean,
is dead.
does what do you mean the right person will not be found guilty? I mean, have we
Because I
given up?
don't believe no, because I have never, ever, ever, from when the story broke, I have
Mm,
never believed the story of intruders coming into that house. I
right.
do believe that the shooter is someone that was in that house, a very specific someone,
Mhm,
uh, who is the only person. If you play Cluedo, right, the
mm,
person who didn't belong, who also
yeah.
happens to have a very powerful father.
Uh, who? Who's this person who has a very powerful father?
I think it's Longwe.
Really?
I
And who's
do.
Longo's father?
Chico Twala's son.
Oh, of course, yes, of course. Sorry, quite right. Jesus. Well, that's a hell of a story.
It, it is the only story that makes sense.
Mm,
It is the
And
only story that makes sense.
they've been
Why
gunning
would
for Kelly from day one, right?
no, I don't think they've been gunning for Kelly from day one. I think Kelly is collateral. I think Kelly is
Gee.
collateral damage.
Well, I mean, there are all kinds of theories. Snipes says some say Kelly was supposed to die because her mom is a dealer. Some say she wanted to shoot Senzo
Yo,
as a sacrifice,
is
and
a
Longwe brought her down.
sacrifice.
Sus.
I've heard that.
Wow. Joking Atheist says she will not go to jail. This is South Africa. She'll probably be offered the position of media minister. Media minister. That one.
Rachel is
Hey,
so
wonder
touched. Rachel,
Phumi.
know what? You're right, because the only people who were there in the house, none of those people are coming forward
Mhm.
and being truthful witnesses. None of
Yeah.
the people who were in that house, none of their stories match. None of the people who were in that house, their stories match. And
Yeah.
Tifo was right. It's a fucked up situation.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Totally.
Hey, KP, I forgot to say allegedly. Don't have the 500,000 rand. Allegedly, allegedly.
Yeah, the Longwe version sounds plausible according to Tabo. He says Kelly called Chico first, not the police.
Why? Why?
Mm.
Why would you do that? Someone's been shot. You don't call you call somebody who is all the way in Santon, supposedly.
Hmm.
Who gets there before the police? Who
Hmm.
gets there before the police? You don't call the ambulance. You don't sugar. These
That
people.
one we are not going to tolerate at all. At all. At all. I've said.
At all, at all. At all.
I love that guy. Oh my god. All right, so that's the big that's the goss. That's the tea on the streets.
Yes, and it just all of it just creates more and more. Apparently, they found pictures of
Mm.
bags of money on her phone, a
Mm.
conversation between her and her sister, a text conversation between Kelly and her sister talking about getting rid of Senzo. I mean, Senzo was
Jesus.
her married lover. Maybe she was deciding she's had enough
Oh,
of being the side chick. But yeah,
oh,
here we are.
it's unbelievable. They even cleaned the crime scene, Sandile says, right? Why?
Wena.
Mm. Mm. All right. Well, I think we've all got to find out who Kelly's Sangoma is because that might be handy. Speaking of Sangomas, I saw this on the
That's what
news.
everybody is saying. What would you ask Kelly Sangoma to do for you? Who are you thinking of killing that needs Kelly
No,
Sangoma?
I don't want to kill anybody, but here's a fun story about Sangomas. Gogo Skoteni and her husband have called it quits.
But
I've been
wait.
single for 6 months, says Gogo Skoteni. And the only reason I even know about this is because of Simpiwe and Jane. And they told me about Gogo Maweni and Gogo Skoteni. I know
Uyabona?
this. Yeah. All right. On a lighter
And
note, Crickets.
all that tells you about Gogo's Kotendi's single dom, right? Is that
Mm,
Umjolo is not anybody's age mate. Umjolo asintanga yakho. Even the Sangoma can keep the man.
that's right. So don't waste your money. Don't waste your time. Ricky says on a lighter note, Drickus arrives in 1 hour. Hopefully, OR Tambo will go crazy. I'm sure there'll be people there to meet him. I'm sure there will. South Africa loves a winner because we don't get a lot of them. So we'll definitely take it. Oh, by the way, Dr. Mark from the Tea Clinic will be joining us a little bit later on the little preview of the Tea Health show that we have this morning. We're going to be talking to him a
Always my
little bit.
favorite.
Yeah, it's always good fun. And we'll talk to him about sleep because he has Dr. Alison Bentley she's the sleep specialist on the show today. And she was on our show not so long ago. So we'll find out what he's going to be asking her and what he thinks of sleep and, all the things associated with not getting enough sleep, aging, stress, obviously fatigue during the
Crankiness.
day, crankiness, itchiness, irritability, all of that
Itchy.
stuff.
Itchiness.
No, but you know what I mean. It's like someone is, when I say
Yo,
itchy, I mean like metaphorically.
yo. Oh, okay. That
Yeah.
was shoo.
It's that
Because
you think that was a sign of like sleeplessness generally.
Lord, I was like,
All right.
what? I
So
struggle
I
with
want
sleep. You know this. I struggle with sleep. And if I have to contend with being like not sleeping enough and then being itchy too.
I want to open the floor to Phumi Mashiko now to complain about something all of us will want to join her in a massive protest about. Because there are a few things that irritate South Africans more than when we feel ripped off by the shops and by the manufacturers and by particularly the food manufacturers. So
God.
Pumi's she's going to bring up something that you probably haven't even noticed, but that's happened. And if you have noticed it, you're already annoyed by it. So you're going to be like, yes, yes, Pumi, tell them about it. So I didn't
Baba.
realize this. I'm happy to admit. But now, even though I didn't get it at the time, now that I found out about it, I'm hugely pissed off. Go ahead, tell people about this. People have got to know.
Dude. So in my household, Inkomazi is a very, very important and big part of the diet. My
Sure.
son loves Inkomazi. I had to learn how to make putu and all of that. And I never used to know how to make huputu because when I was younger, when I was little, growing up with my grandmother made amasi for every lunch. So like amasi, I was clear I'm never eating amasi when I grow up. And then I had a
And you
son.
don't like and you don't like putu.
No, I like pap, not to put. Hey, Baba. So anyway, here I am. 16 years later, this boy loves amasi. It's one of his favorite things.
Yeah.
So they have reduced the
Yeah.
2-liter Inkomazi to 1.8 liters.
So you've lost 200
That
mils,
cup,
and they've kept the price the same.
that cup of amasi, Baba, that cup of amasi, and no one tells you. They haven't changed the shape of the bottle, so you just like, no. Take your 2-liter, and it's not 2 liters. And they've kept the price. The price has,
And
and I
what
just,
company is this that you are pissed off with in particular here?
well, Inkomazi, believe it or not, is actually made by Danone, which is a French company.
Yeah.
Hey, Baba, I'm just saying, 1.8, that cup of amasi that you are missing from your 2-liter
Mhm.
is a lot.
Of course it
Is
is.
a lot.
200 mils. Plenty.
It's like it's and I remember the outrage when
Mhm.
Cadbury made its slabs smaller, right? When they made the slab 150 grams, there was outrage. I
Yeah.
think we should be just as outraged about amasi, guys.
I remember when, they had 180-gram slabs and they made them 150, and then they had
Mhm.
90-gram slabs and they made them 80. And they didn't
Yeah.
tell us. They just did it
No,
quietly.
actually, no. It actually used to be 100-gram slab, and then they made it 90,
Sorry, quite
and
right.
then
They
they
made
made
it
it 80. Now it's 80. Now eating a slab
I
of
mean,
chocolate doesn't
if
feel
they
like a
carry
slab
on
of
like this,
chocolate.
if they carry on like this, it'll be one little square of chocolate, and we'll be buying it for the same price as the slab soon.
Because they keep everything the same. They keep the shape of it. They keep so you don't even see it, and then they put the number like small at the bottom. No one's even looking.
Tracy says, same with ice cream. The size of a tub of ice cream has gone from 2 liters to 1.8 liters, and they charge you more for less.
Oh
I
yeah,
make my own.
guys.
Mm,
This is why we must be vigilant to these people. You must watch these people carefully. Dude.
yeah, right. And Proper Gender says they did that with crisps. It's a bag of air. Yeah, I noticed that. They fill them with, they do. They blow air into them to make it look like it's more substantial and full. But meanwhile, the actual amount of chips in the packet has shrunk.
Steve in the comments says they've done it with the beer because that's actually one of the things that I thought about. I thought, imagine if they reduce the size of the liquor bottles,
And
they
they
will
have.
change the. And Steve has seen it,
Yeah.
guys.
Yes.
We're being taken. We're being taken here. We're being
Right.
taken, and nobody, nobody is
People
even.
people are furious, Phumi. Furious.
You see, I told you guys this is outrageous, the life
Right.
that we are made to live.
Spot on. So people are very, very angry.
There is a cacophony of jabberings at that corner. Please come to silence.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Cacophony of jabberings.
Telling you,
No,
we must mount.
it's
We should mount a protest, much like the French farmers. Did you see that protest with the French farmers pouring
I did.
manure in the Parliament buildings?
It's the right way to do things.
We sh- we should we should mount a protest because it's ridiculous. This.
Well, Max Sony brings up something I saw in the news on Tuesday about watered down diesel. Did you see this?
I will.
Oh no, they found a bunch of petrol stations that are doing this.
What does that mean? Watered down diesel.
Well, they're adding other things to the diesel to dilute it, but it's not water. They're not actually adding water to
Yeah,
diesel.
no, I don't think that they'd add. So they're adding like a touch of what? Paraffin. But what does that do to your car? Banna, is there a list
Right.
somewhere? Is there a list somewhere? I need to know who these people are.
Well, they went around to a bunch of different petrol stations and they tested their diesel, and they found some of them had added paraffin, among other things. Now that's terrifying because your car's engine, just like you can't add diesel to a petrol car and you can't add petrol to a diesel car, you can't just willy-nilly go and add some paraffin.
Winner.
Over time, it degrades all sorts of things in the engine. It doesn't burn the same way. It's a massive problem. And Morabbit says it's mostly paraffin. You can even smell it when driving behind some cars. Huh?
What is this world? What is this world we're living in? We're living in a simulation. 2024, guys. It's a simulation. It's not the real thing.
And the people who don't care, the crooks, seem to be the only ones enjoying the life. You know, they're the ones having the best time. They seem to be laughing their backsides off at the rest of us, making a mockery. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Anyway, so apparently we're just being screwed left, right, and center, Phumi. They're reducing the amount of stuff that we're buying, but increasing the prices. It's just unbelievable. And someone says here, and in all of this drama, the Bajaj keeps surviving. They spelled Bajaj. Jeez, I'm seeing a lot of those Bajajes on the road, hey? Yo, every single day I go into work now, in Joburg, I see them everywhere. People driving around in a Primus stove. That's so good. I like that.
Primus stove.
But it is a kind of price gouging, isn't it? That's how you categorize this crime. You say it's price gouging. Terrible.
And what is the Competition Commission doing to protect us? Nothing.
What are they there?
Nothing.
What are they there? Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely nothing.
Sick.
Here we are with an entire 200. Do you know like how long the school holidays would be in my life without Amasi?
Well, you know, you're losing an extra cup every time you buy one. So imagine if you've got a recipe that you're trying to follow and you need exactly 2 liters. Now you must suddenly buy 2 1.8 liters just to be able to make the recipe. Right? Bullshit.
I think the egregious thing is the fact that they don't tell you, but the fact that they keep everything exactly the same. There's just less.
The price. Yeah, the whole thing. And you know those people who do those pack, I think they're called Tetra Pak or whatever, that do the milk cartons and all of those things.
Yes.
Such a clever business. Because when they're told that it's not them who make the decision, but if they're told by the manufacturer of the product inside the pack, we need this thing made smaller, but we don't want people to notice that it's got smaller, they can just take it in by a little bit on each corner. They can just take it down a little bit in height. You won't even notice.
No ways. No way. Like random chance that we noticed the 1.8 mil. Random.
Yeah.
Absolutely random.
A lot of people in the comments are pointing out that the egg prices that went up when there was a supposed egg shortage, remember that? Have they come down? Have those egg prices come down?
The egg shortage was a price reset.
Mm-hmm.
The egg shortage was a price reset. There was just create the havoc. We're all like, oh my God, there are no eggs. And when the eggs come back, they're scarce. And now the price is up. That's it. It's never going back down. Boom.
Yeah, well, let's bring Dr. Mark in at this point, because he's always telling us about nutrition and how important that is, and you know, particularly protein, and how if you want a healthy body and you want to feed your system properly, you need to eat the right foods. And today we'll talk a bit about sleeping. But Dr. Mark, have you noticed how they're ripping us off with products in the shops these days? How things have got smaller, prices have stayed the same, or gone up?
You know, but it's any man's worst fear, things are getting smaller. So yeah, Michael, Gareth, this is weird, and you know it's something that's happening all over the world. We are being screwed whether we like it or not.
Nobody likes being screwed.
Well,
Wow.
I don't mean it. Okay, so let's talk about sleep for a
Let's just
second.
talk about sleep.
well,
So
you know
Pumi's
what, Michael? Why
Pumi's very
are we
worried.
calling you
Why are you
Michael
calling me
today,
Michael?
Gareth?
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I just woke up, so like you, I'm still not awake completely.
I promise you, I'm not Michael. I put my name is on the show. There, you can see
Yeah,
it right
but
there.
you know what? I've done anatomy in Braille, so my reading has gone bad. I've decided to talk about sleep because it's something in my practice that's pervasive. 80% of my patients, when I ask them this question, when you wake up in the morning, are you refreshed? Answers no. And the second question when I ask them is, do you snore? And the majority of them say yes. Now, I've asked Dr. Alison Bentley, she's a sleep specialist, to join me on our show this morning to talk specifically about what sleep is and why it's so incredibly important for us, not to only get enough sleep, but to get good quality of sleep.
But Doc, so we had Dr. Alison Bentley on a while ago on the show, and I'm pleased that she'll be speaking to an expert with you there in the room. And I think when you mentioned snoring, you're hinting at sleep apnea, right? And that's a major problem for a lot of men. And snoring, of course, is a terrible thing. And I know someone whose husband died. He died during the night because he couldn't breathe properly. Yes.
Yeah, you know what? I think people think only about sleep apnea, and that's where you stop breathing for a certain amount of time during each hour. Yes, it's bad. Sleep apnea is associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, of diabetes, of cancer, cognitive decline, kidney function and kidney failure. But people really don't understand that we have different types of obstructed breathing during sleep. In my practice, I ask the patients, what happens if I choke you? You know what? You will pass out. Eventually, you will die. But that passing out first is something that we forget. Most of us don't know that breathing is an autonomic reaction. It doesn't involve the brain. So during sleep, when brain activity starts slowing down, your spine is responsible for breathing. It happens automatically. But if your saturation, the amount of oxygen in your blood starts dropping because you're not breathing properly or because I'm choking you, the brain needs to start taking over so that you can gasp. So you start disturbing your sleep cycles. Now, there's two distinct cycles of sleep or stages of sleep. You have non-REM sleep and REM sleep, and each one of them is associated with a specific thing that happens during sleep. We make memories, we learn, we purge information, all during different stages of sleep. So if those cycles are disturbed, it has an effect on brain function. Our immune system, which recuperates and regenerates and is activated while you sleep, starts declining. Your emotional state, when it comes to depression and anxiety, starts activating. This increases it. So many of us at the moment battle to manage stress. And the cornerstone of managing stress is getting good sleep. So this is not just the emotional and the fatigue side. It's also the detrimental effect on every single system in the body, specifically the cardiovascular system, the kidneys, and then your immune system.
So, and what's your view on medicated sleep? So taking, suppressants so that you can sleep.
You know what, to me, as someone that's been battling with insomnia since childhood, I'm absolutely an advocate for sleeping aids, whether it's a sleeping tablet, whether it's medical grade CBD, and I do call it medical grade CBD. I'm not calling it kitchen cannabis, for one simple reason. If I can't sleep, I cannot function. And the amount of anxiety that I personally have developed over the years of not being able to sleep is debilitating. I have been taking the same sleeping tablet for the past 28 years, the same dose, and that makes me sleep well, so that I can function every day. A lot of practitioners wouldn't or do not like to give sleep aids in the form of sedatives or any kind of sleeping tablet. But I think a lot of them are people that has never battled with sleep. Medication is indicated and it's effective if you use it correctly for the correct indication. People who become addicted to sleeping tablets use it for other stuff. They're using it during the day to change their moods and to change emotion, and that's where the problem comes in.
And how long is a decent night's sleep?
So on average for adults, 7 to 9 hours for the most of us. It's very
Wait, what?
interesting. 7 to
Too
9
much.
hours. Yeah. How many of us get 7 to 9 hours sleep? That's actually how much we need. So many of us think that we can manage with 5 hours of sleep. It's really not enough. Now, the very interesting thing is that women actually needs more sleep than men. I'm not going to tell you why, because every single man will refute this. Women
Because men are
actually
exhausting.
need more of their brain, so they need more sleep. It's actually been proven. So, if you ask any guy, he's going to deny that.
Just hang on.
Most women sleep less than men
use
anyway,
more.
so
Hang on.
I think they have less brains.
Men use more of their brain, so they need more sleep.
Women use
Oh.
more of a brain because apparently they multitask. As I said, again, any man would say, don't believe that.
But Doc, I mean, for me, that would mean I would have to go to sleep at some unbelievably early hour, which I can never do.
Exactly. This is the problem.
What about if you split your sleep up?
Yeah,
Let's say
broken sleep.
Perfect.
Let's say you sleep for 5 hours at night, and then you force yourself to have like an hour's nap during the day. Does that help you?
Absolutely brilliant. The trend now in Europe specifically is to create environments for people to have a quick nap somewhere during the course of a day, somewhere between 20 to 40 minutes. And when you start doing that and you've trained your body, but it takes training. It's not about, oh, I'm going to lie down and sleep and then wake up. You literally, there's a set time every day where you go into a space that's set up for good sleep. In other words, it's a dark, quiet, cool room, and you get on the bed, you sleep for 30 minutes, the alarm goes off, you get up and you carry on with your day. It takes training to get that routine going. But once you have that routine, the benefits of it is far reaching, especially on productivity and on mood.
You
Yeah,
mentioned, sorry,
a
sorry,
nap
Pums, you
during the
mentioned,
day. A nap during the day is amazing. Is always amazing if you can find a quiet space and the 30 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
but you mentioned also, you mentioned cool. So do we sleep better when the temperature is slightly lower?
Oh, absolutely. But the ideal temperature for a bedroom is somewhere between 16 and 20 degrees, more closer to about 18.
Okay.
That's
Wow.
why most of us sleep so badly in summer. Most of us who don't have access to air conditioning sleep so badly in winter. The body
In
needs to
summer.
cool down itself.
Mm.
When you sleep, a lot of your physiological processes slow down. They don't stop, but they slow down. So it allows us to drop our core temperature a little bit. And if you can help that with the environment, often sleep problems is related to not only sleep hygiene, but sleep routine. So I force my patients who sleep badly to, yeah, cell phones. I force my patients to do the same thing every night. And I tell them, you know what, whether you're doing this at 7 o'clock on a cold winter's night or 4 o'clock in the morning after a massive party, you do the same thing. If your routine is that you go and shower, you brush your teeth, you find the cat, you throw it out, you take your tablets, you get into bed, you read your book, you sleep. You signal the brain that sleep is coming. What a lot of people tend to do is they work too late or they exercise too late. And you know, when you have a lot of endorphins, you've given the brain new information that it has to process, and you know, you can't go to sleep. Most people have either a TV or a iPad or a laptop or a phone somewhere with them in the room, and that's just an absolute no-no. You know what? It's not only about the blue light that you keep on stimulating. Blue light, by the way, stimulates cortisol, which is what we see first thing in the morning. When the sun comes up, that light that is there is what starts spiking our cortisol levels to wake us up. We need dark red light to trigger melanin and melatonin. And melatonin is what actually puts us to sleep. So by creating sleep disturbances, you create dysfunction and imbalance in your hormone cascades. Everyone follows on another one. We've spoken about it on my show at length about how we create our own hormone imbalances, which will lead then to the sexual dysfunction, the weight gain, the diabetes, etc., etc.
Yo.
It's a big problem. This not sleeping properly. And then you did mention earlier that, you know, snoring affects the man who snores. Sometimes women
It
snore as
affects
well.
everybody. It affects
But what
everybody
about,
in the room.
well, this is it. What about the partner? What about the person who's sleeping in the bed with some dude who's snoring the whole time? And
Yeah,
she can't sleep,
I
you
have
know?
that on a nightly basis, and you know, we have a rule that if we've been out and we've had a couple of drinks, my partner Stefan snores like a hippo on heat. And then it's you don't even get the chance to come into the bedroom. You sleep somewhere else, because I battled to fall asleep, and you know what? He just puts his head down and he's gone. So the noise, 100 decibels, it literally sounds like a Harley Davidson next to me. There's no way that you can get a good night's sleep because, number one, you've had some alcohol, which is not great for sleep in the first place. And number two, there's noise, which, you know what, no one needs when they are sleeping. So, you know what, there's a reason people actually sleep in different bedrooms, because it enhances sleep, especially if you have a partner that's noisy next to you.
Right. And there's a good argument for couples to consider, if they have this particular problem, consider sleeping in separate bedrooms, because it might be the solution to keep the marriage going perversely. Not
Yeah,
sleeping in the same.
absolutely. You know what? I take what we do. Our biggest fights that we've had, and all the time that we were together, was the fact that he snores and I can't sleep.
And what about there's those mouth guards and dental dams or whatever? Do those help with snoring?
You know, Tim's, it's all about the positioning of the jaw. So as you sleep, you know, but the muscles in the jaw and in the throat start slackening, and you know, it can fall back, creating more of an obstructive barrier there. So sometimes they help, but for a lot of people, those things are actually so uncomfortable that you know it prevents them from sleeping. And again, it becomes a training thing. You have to train yourself to sleep with us, etc., etc. But it's the same for people who need to go onto continuous positive airway pressure, the CPAP machines, whether it's a
Oh,
mask or whether it's cannulas. These things are uncomfortable. So it takes training and dedication for you to use them effectively, and you know what, for you to get the optimal benefit. In my practice, I refer so many of my patients to Dr. Bentley for evaluation and ultimately for treatment. And you know, 20% of those patients that we want or that we need to put onto CPAP devices just can't. You know, but they find it way too intrusive, and it actually makes their sleep worse. And then we need to try and find other ways of managing this. So you know, but surgical intervention starts becoming an option, positional changing of the beds becoming an option, but we'll discuss that with her a little bit later on the show.
well, that's fantastic, and you can listen to the conversation between Dr. Mark and Dr. Alison Bentley a little bit later on the T Health Show. Doc, don't miss it today, Thursday, 9 a.m. And if you don't get it
Thanks,
then, you
guys.
can always listen to it later as a podcast. You don't want to miss this. It's really important stuff. And get your sleeping right. Your whole life will improve.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Doc. Very good. We will be back
Have a
in
good
just a
day.
moment. Thank you, and you. And we will be back with a burning platform. That's coming up next. Don't go anywhere. All right. It is time for the burning platform. Look, we've got the full cast and crew here this morning. Phumi Mashiko, Anthony Pillay. Nice to see both of you. And guess what? We have so much to talk about. Surprise, surprise. Politics in 2024. How are you, Canton? What's been happening with you?
I'm pretty good. I'm just a bit disconcerted because the way Ryan's got the cameras rigged today, when I'm looking at you, I'm basically looking down at your face out here, whereas technically cameras up there, I think. So, yeah,
Don't
right.
worry.
I mean, what's up with
Don't
this?
worry.
And guys, all of this is because of the fact that Gareth didn't get to the studio
I
this
know.
morning, and he's doing the show from home, and that's why he's
Right.
having this talk about sleep, because you overslept, right?
Correct. Everything is linked, Canton.
Uh-huh.
Nothing's by mistake. Everything is on purpose on this show.
You know,
So
yeah, I've got
listen.
this brilliant. Listen, guys, I've got this brilliant app on my phone. It's called Sleep Cycle. It's a free
Yeah.
app, and
Yeah.
basically what it does is it tracks the sound of your sleep pattern, so your breathing and so forth. So if you tell it, I want to wake up at 6 a.m., it will wake you up at the point in REM sleep where you're about to slip back into deep sleep, so that you don't end up waking up groggy.
Sleep cycle.
Sleep Cycle, yeah, it's brilliant.
I have to be honest with you. I don't know if I like the idea that some app is listening to me sleep.
Well, you know,
bit
it's a toss up between the app listening to you or, not sleeping well. You know, you do you. It's all good. I don't mind.
All right. Okay.
You know, I don't stress about these things.
Let's get into it because there's quite a lot of stuff on the agenda this week, as if it would be different any other week. So, a lot of people still talking about Zuma and the ANC. In fact, we got an email from Vince, and maybe we must go straight here because the burning platform is about what's going on in the news, and politics and the news always go together.
Vince.
So Vince says in an email, what if Zuma and the ANC know that the ANC support is falling sharply? In fact, I heard that the ANC's internal polling says that they will do a hell of a lot worse than what everyone else is saying. Like we're talking really bad, like low 40s, high 30s in percentage points. Very bad. So the ANC is aware of this. So Vince is right on that front. He says, what if they know this and they've decided to do something about it together? So in the public, if Zuma and the ANC seem to be against each other, disgruntled ANC voters are more likely to vote for Zuma's MK party. Obviously, MK then sides with the ANC and KZN after the elections, and ANC power is restored. This is a better strategy than the ANC simply asking Zuma to endorse them. They know their voters are gatvol. What do you think of that?
You know, on Game of Thrones, they had the old people would say, "Oh, you sweet summer child."
Right?
Or bless your heart, as the Americans would say.
Look, I think that there are many theories that people will have in their minds about who's going to vote with whom, and there's a particular big opposition party that does a lot of that kind of fear mongering around smaller parties and other people throwing away your vote or sending it back to the ANC. Look, guys, I think people, I don't see Jacob Zuma reconciling with Cyril Ramaphosa. I just don't see it happening.
What if they got rid of Cyril before the elections?
Then the disgruntled voters. It depends on what the voters are disgruntled about. Are they disgruntled about Cyril? Are they disgruntled about the ANC? Are they disgruntled about service delivery? Yeah.
All right. Well, we start off with Vince's email because the most important people on the show are the people who listen to the show. So he
did
wants
we
to
not
know.
wake up yesterday with a news headline? Sorry, Gareth. Did we not also wake up yesterday with the news headline of how the presidency and the state attorney are going after Jacob Zuma to repay the 28 odd million rand as per court order that was used to pay for his for all his court cases, right? Not all his court cases, but one corruption case in particular. Yesterday, this is the
Mhm.
news item.
Yes,
And
that's right.
all I thought about when I saw that was, why now?
Well,
What does
because
this
it's the
mean?
weaponization of the state against a potential threat to the incumbent. It's exactly what's happening with Trump and Biden.
Before we get, I don't want to jump ahead here because we're going to talk American politics in a little while. There's a huge amount going on there too. I just want to bring this in because we seldom look at what's happening on the continent with the same degree of interest that we do Russia, China, America, whoever else. So
No, we do. It's
Hichilema,
just that you guys shoot me down, especially Phumi.
I don't think that's true. So
Arriving here first thing in the morning. Viewing
okay,
rubbish.
so
Why
the
did I
reason
shoot
I
you
want to
down?
bring this up, Hakainde Hichilema, who's the Zambian president at the moment, right? He's been president since August of 2021. The guy is making incredible strides in Zambia, and we're just not paying a lot of attention to him. But I saw this video. I think it's originally been posted on TikTok, but I saw it on Instagram. Take a listen to this. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Hakainde Hichilema of Zambia is the best president so far in Africa. He's such a genius. I mean, look at this.
Why are you using money to buy a VX for the mayor? That VX for the mayor can put toilets in all the markets in your constituents. Think along those lines. The mayor can still drive a nice car, but it doesn't have to be a VX. If you want to drive a VX, buy your own. Buy your own. Why do you want to pretend? You know that you cannot afford a VX. Why do you want to pretend? Because you are using taxpayers' money. Now you should pretend, but a decent Hilux, double cab, aircon. It's a fantastic vehicle. Why you want a VX? Why you want a car costing $200,000? When that $200,000 you can put toilets in all the markets in that constituency.
So it goes on. I don't want to play the whole thing, but it goes on to reveal that he actually did not buy new vehicles when he came in as president. His staff said to him, "All right, you're the new president. It's time to buy some new vehicles." And he said, "Why? These ones are fine." Now, it sounds like a silly little thing, right? It doesn't sound like a big deal. Like this should not be the big story. And obviously, it's got that irritating voiceover that this is the best president Africa's ever had, which is ridiculous. But it is a kind of important thing that we don't see very often, not just on this continent, all over the world, let's be fair, where politicians use taxpayers' money for all kinds of bullshit that doesn't help the people that elected them, helps them as politicians. And if this guy is solidly standing against that stuff, even if this is symbolic, and he's telling the other people, mayors, premiers, ministers, to also stop wasting this money, that is a very important signal that needs to be sent out again. The people love it. People of Zambia love this. They're very, very charmed and impressed by this. What do you think of it?
I have a question first, because you said, Gareth, apropos of this is the best president that Africa's ever had. Who was the best president that Africa ever had?
I don't know. I'm a little bit biased, but we kind of had a massive international hero was our president for a little while. And I know he's come under fire lately, and people in many parts of South Africa think that he was a sellout. But I would say ours is up there.
Well, you see, so my view on this is if you take actual measurables, and the measurables for me is that very basic thing that if you have economic growth that is outpacing your population growth, then that's the path to prosperity in a country. It's a just a very simple metric. And on that basis, I'm very clear that Thabo Mbeki was the best president that this continent has ever had in terms of actually uplifting people out of poverty during his era. And if you use that particular metric, then Zambia is doing that right now. Kenya is doing that right now. Rwanda very much is doing that right now. And it's basically, the same pattern. I think that when we start focusing on very specific, visible things like vehicles, people who virtue signal around the fact that I'm driving a small car because I don't want to be seen to be flaunting my wealth in the faces of the masses. But ultimately, that's not doing anything really in terms of boosting the economy. I often tell people from a business perspective, having run businesses many times over, you can't cut your way to success.
Mm.
You have to have growth. And yes, I think it's very cool that you have a president of a country who's sending out a visible signal that wasting money or not prioritizing expenditure is a good thing to do. But whenever I see that type of thing happening, I want to look at the big picture, and I want to see where are the big ticket items that are actually being purchased. Where is the money actually flowing to? So Zambia in particular, has very close relationships with China. And there are a number of deals that have been struck in that context that, with regard to management of airports and all of that kind of thing. And
Right.
I want to get a sense of, to what extent money is actually leaving the country that way before I start drilling down to the viral TikTok videos, which I think are very cool, by the way. And, I'm not dissing those viral TikTok videos, but yeah, I think that if we try and replicate that particular thing out here, the fact of the matter is that the massive chunks of money that get stolen are not on the motor vehicles. Okay, the massive chunks of money that get stolen
Sure.
are the contracts that get siphoned off to the cadres on the side. And we drop the ball. We are not seeing the forest for the trees.
Okay, Pums, do you agree?
Unfortunately, I think if you look at it on a number line or on a
Mhm.
timeline,
Mhm.
you get blips of individuals coming into various countries starting out very successfully, making changes and then somewhere along the line, Mugabe comes to mind. Even Kanthan spoke about Rwanda. I mean, the same story, watching what's happening in Rwanda. I think some parts of Rwanda may be on the upswing on the back of a for a lot of people in Rwanda, a tyrannical president who is, for all intents, a dictator, right? But I do think that one of the biggest pitfalls that we have on the continent is we do have leaders on the continent that really just don't care about the people. Whether we're talking about the African Union and holding each other accountable, whether we're talking about the number of conflicts and wars that we don't care about, all the various leaders on here. I mean, yesterday, one of the big news stories coming out of Germany is about Sudan. You don't hear that here at home. No one here at
Yeah.
home is talking about the Sudanese and what's happening there. But
No.
the, the the biggest problem we have on the continent is we do not have leaders who hold each other accountable, and we do not have people who hold their leaders accountable. And so it may start out well, great, the
I
Zambian
want to go to
president,
No, again, I'm going to
but where are
contradict
we
that,
going to?
Gareth, because we have three very specific examples that are happening right now in Francophone Africa. We have Mali, we have Burkina Faso, and we have Niger. And all of those right now, if you look in terms of all of the metrics around what's happening on the ground, there is real delivery that is happening against a backdrop
And
of a lack of democracy. Let's be very clear about that.
and
But it's
huge
real delivery
conflicts
that's happened.
and
And the huge conflicts
and people
have
dying.
been fomented by the foreign powers who are being expelled from those territories right now. We have the rebranded Wagner Group, by the way. This is an interesting scenario that, Russia's Wagner Group, Gareth and Phumi, the one that was headed by
Yep.
Prigozhin, who
Who's
died
dead.
under mysterious circumstances. Yes.
Sure.
So now that's been rebranded. It's called the Africa Force or something like that. But effectively, it's they've now being deployed into those three countries, effectively to ensure that the insurgents that are coming on board, which are basically the ISIS Al-Shabaab type guys who were fundamentally funded by the Americans, remember, to start off. And there's actual real progress that's happening on the ground out there. You have the situation right now in terms of Kenya, where they've basically agreed that every country in the world has visa-free entry into Kenya. It happens to you have to do it through electronic processing online and subject to your passport details and so forth. But it literally is.
I just want to ask you quickly, since you brought up the Wagner Group, which is now called Africa Force or whatever it is, what would be to South Africa and many of our neighbors' advantage? Would it be for these Russian forces to prevail over the Al-Shabaab, ISIS, Boko Haram people? Or would we prefer to have the opposite occur? I mean, it seems to me like an obvious answer, but you go ahead, Kanthan, you tell me.
Well, I think if we use the Syria as an example. So
Yes.
what is the problem in Syria right now? The problem in Syria right now is that you have an illegal invasion of Syria, which is by the Americans, who have troops on the ground in Syria. Why are those troops on the ground in Syria? It's because the Americans are stealing Syrian oil as well as Syrian natural gas, and they're exporting it out of the country via Iraq. Now, the problem that we have on lots of this continent, DRC being a case in point, where you have mineral wealth in various parts of the country, which is why you have the conflict in the southeast part of the country that is being effectively backed by the Zimbabweans and by the Rwandese, because they want access to the mineral wealth that is to be found in the southwest part of the country. The biggest thing that Wagner/Africa Force, whatever they want to call themselves, brings to the party is the very simple act of being able to secure the borders against people who are coming from outside to steal the mineral wealth of the country and take it out. And I think that is the fundamental point that we need to look for. How do you get to stability without having secure borders? In this country, we can see, the fact that people just hop across the Limpopo happily.
So borders notwithstanding as an obviously good thing for any sovereign country to protect, otherwise they aren't a sovereign country. You are not a country unless you have safe and secure borders. And we'll get to Biden in a little while, because the exact opposite is happening there, and the Texas governor is rebelling openly against him. We'll talk about that in a second, but let's stay on Africa. What is to our advantage? What would play out to maximize South Africa's advantage? Would we like these Russian forces to do better against these Islamists? I don't see a potentially worse outcome for us if Russia wins. But am I being naive? Because
I think it's not a question of whether Russia wins, because what's very clear is that if you look across the arc of history, in scenarios where you've actually had Russian troops on the ground, and they've been a rarity in terms of this continent, having troops on the ground. There has been support that has come at various levels, but if you think back to the apartheid era, it was Cuban troops that were on the ground in Angola / Namibia rather than actual Russian troops. But the fundamental point for me is, if you just use the DRC as a very specific example. Now, you take all of the economies of all of the SADC countries and take South Africa out of that picture. Okay, and you take all of the SADC countries and add them together, then you get the economy of the DRC. So now what we have between the DRC and ourselves is massive instability, including in the DRC itself. So if you're actually able to stabilize the situation in the DRC, and then by extension the surrounding countries, and you look in terms of places where Russia is currently playing a role. So they're in the Central African Republic, and you currently still have chaos in the other Congo, the Republic of Congo. If you're able to stabilize that area, the immediate impact on that is you don't have this constant flow of refugees fleeing from the DRC, who inevitably end up in South Africa as car guards. Because car guards in this country, guys, is run by a Congolese mafia. You can speak French to almost any car guard that you come across. If you create stability in that part of the world, okay, and let's be very clear, stability is not the same as democracy. Because what we've got out here right now is democracy in our country, and we're basically unstable.
Rwanda is stable, and as Phumi pointed out, they're not necessarily
Look,
as
the guy's a mafia boss.
But
Okay,
but
Paul Kagame.
he is a mafia
but
boss.
where
Mm.
so stability with a mafia
Yes,
running the country,
yes.
and who benefits from that?
The masses on the ground.
How
Because
do the
for
masses on the ground
because the
benefit
average
from
per-
having the mafia run
because
their
they
country?
have clean
This is
streets,
where
they
we
have
are.
lack of crime, they have an overall
Not
increase in.
necessarily.
They,
That's conjecture.
no, that's data.
That is conjecture. So on
How,
the
no,
ground,
how can
in
data
the
be
DRC,
conjecture
what
when you
is the
can see
data?
a real increase in GDP per capita, when you can see an overall increase in terms of educational levels, when you can see an overall increase
Where's that
out
data?
of poverty? The immediate place for you to start looking at is the CIA's World Factbook, which in turn draws upon a myriad of sources. Go to the World Factbook, check out the data in terms of Rwanda, check out the data in terms of all countries, including ourselves. All of those get sourced independently. It's all very well to roll your eyes and just kind of shrug skeptically, but the data is real.
So I think though
Hmm.
that you're having a conversation that says we would rather have a mafia run this particular state because we think that the mafia is going to keep the people safe, is going to keep stability in the country.
That's
and for
every
some
single
kind of
gated community in this
benevolence,
country is
and
a
out
mafia.
of some kind of benevolence, the
Every
people
single
will,
gated community in this
the
country is
people will
run
get the
by a mafia.
drippings of whatever
And
it
most
is that
people
they
want to
make.
live in gated communities. Why? Because you surrender some of your constitutional
You
rights
started out
in
by
exchange
talking
for the
about
fact that people
you
build
started out by
walls,
talking
they
about the
enforce
arc of
rules.
history and
guys.
everywhere where Russia has had boots on the ground. Is this how it worked out for Afghanistan? Is this how it worked out for North Korea?
They pulled out from Afghanistan.
And
Did-
let's just look at this too. I mean, I don't want us to get stuck here because obviously there's a difference of opinion about what the optimal situation is. But there's no question about the optimal situation because we've got to deal with what's realistic and what's available. What's amazing is that Russia can bring a very small number of active military personnel into a place and have maximum effect on this continent. It doesn't take a lot. You know, we often think, well, you would need a massive invasion army like they have in Ukraine, for example, and that Russia is mounting against the Ukraine. But actually, you don't need nearly as many people in Africa to cause chaos or to stop chaos. It just requires a few people who are well armed and who are well trained, and you can get anything you like. I mean, we've seen coup attempts in places like the Comores and Equatorial Guinea and all the rest of it. They failed, but very many others that we don't even know about have succeeded.
Well, that's a very critical point that you're raising there, Gareth, because the number of boots that Russia ends up having on the ground with these operations is not enough to mount an invasion, let alone an occupation. And invasions are easy. Okay, occupations are really difficult because then you have to fight against people with who have a vested interest in driving you out of the country. And the primary role that they play out there is to ensure that the people who are on the ground, the actual troops for that particular country, are incredibly well trained. And more importantly, they then get to tap into all of the technology resources that Russia has access to. Because remember that satellite surveillance is a significant part of actually being able to track where Al-Shabaab terrorists are coming into your country. And let's be very clear, okay? These guys are terrorists, however you might, okay? Al-Shabaab are terrorists, ISIS are terrorists, Hamas are terrorists. Let's be clear about
we
this.
talk about we have a problem with Paul Kagame, but with all the love in the world and considering the history of Rwanda in particular, it seems to me a preferable outcome to have a mafia boss in charge of your country, as you put it, Canton. Those are your words, not mine.
I mean,
And
if you drill down to
That's
it,
just the thing.
put
They're
the-
not in charge of the country.
to have a bunch of Islamists who are running around chopping off people's heads.
They're not in charge of the country. They're only in charge of those areas that benefit them. They're not in charge of the country. They're only
Bad enough.
in charge of those areas, those mining areas where they are interested, where they get maximum benefit. The rest of it can go to hell.
They are not extracting minerals from Niger. Russia is not extracting minerals from Niger. If you look in terms of every single thing that Niger currently produces, so Russia is a net exporter of uranium. Let's be very clear about this, which is the single biggest product right now that everyone is concerned about with regard to Niger. Russia is a net exporter. They have no interest in actually obtaining supplies from there. Do they have an interest in making sure?
What are they doing in Niger?
What are they doing in Niger? They try to get
They're
stability
being
out there,
benevolent
and more
dictators.
importantly, to try and prevent the collapse of multilateralism. Because remember that all of these countries have been destabilized for the longest time. The plans in terms of the reason why the West has consistently gone after Russia is they wanted to break up Russia and obtain its mineral wealth. And they've been very successful in doing that in Africa. Remember the very simple act that the Nigerians did at the point at which they came in was to simply raise the price of uranium from cents in the euro to about 20 euros.
Yeah, but
So
there's,
now
It's
they
just,
control
just
the
such
entire
a
market.
such a very simple thing. Okay,
surprise,
This is-
surprise.
yeah.
There's no such thing as altruism.
So now they
Mm.
control the market, and Niger can't, without Russia's blessing or their benevolence, they can't monetize
No, they're
what they
monetizing.
have.
They're monetizing quite happily. Right
Only
now.
as much as Russia is willing to allow them.
On what basis do you say that, other than your fundamental bigotry against Russia?
Why
No,
do you
just
think
give
it's
me
bigotry
one
why
bit
do
of
you
data.
think it is bigotry against
Because you
Russia?
haven't provided one bit of data other than the fact that,
That's
show me on this
every-
map where Russia has hurt you.
all Russia has not hurt me in any way, but I'm saying to you that you do not have such a thing as a benevolent colonizer, a benevolent dictator, or a benevolent mafia.
No, but
They're
you do have
all
people.
about their particular
You do have
interests, and
people
that
who
is
go out of
all
their way
they
to
look
help other
after.
people in particular scenarios. Listen,
Because it's
so I'll give you an
good for
example.
everyone.
Okay, all right. I'm in Rotary. We do stuff like we build libraries, we build sports courts, we provide water supplies, we sink boreholes.
because it
Why
makes
do we do
you
that?
feel good.
Not because it makes me feel good, but because it leads to a better society, and I want to live in a better society. Now translate that to a
So
global level.
because you want
Yes.
a society that you
Of course,
have
but
created
there's
for
no such thing
everybody
as-
around. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes.
Is you don't do it because everybody benefits. You do it because you feel better.
No,
about
I'm
it.
doing it because
is going
everyone
to
benefits.
benefit you.
No, it benefits me because everyone benefits.
All right.
I
don't
want
want
to
to
say I clean up streets.
Hold on. The point of the burning platform is not for us to get into issues around human nature, much as they will arise from time to time. I want us to focus on something that I think most people in this country are interested in. So yesterday they had a multi-party charter meeting in Durban. I saw all the opposition leaders headed there. They all got together. They briefed members of the media. They had a big debrief in Durban Harbour on Tuesday. And apparently they said the ANC and its government are responsible for what it termed the collapse of the country's economy, pointing to high unemployment rate, poverty, etc. Action SA leader Herman Mashaba has vowed that the multi-party charter will put this to an end. They're promising big things, but is this multi-party charter working? And I know that Corné Mulder, who was on our show last year, you guys will recall, he is very much the guy who's trying to push this multi-party charter, trying to get everybody into the same room. He's the adult in the room, as far as I can tell, who's trying to get these guys to stop putting their ego ahead of the interests of the people of South Africa. Most people in this country, Frans Cronje said on Tuesday, are in favor. Even ANC supporters are in favor of coalition governments by a wide margin. So does the multi-party charter have any chance of success? Is it worth paying attention to? And if it is, what can we do to help it?
The question is, do we need the charter? Surely the short answer is just vote for anyone besides the ANC. And if you've done that, it doesn't really matter. Let the parties then, when they get to Parliament, actually work out how they are going to be running the country in coalition, if we get to that stage.
Do you
But
think there's
do
no
we really do we really?
no
I don't see the point around the charter.
Okay.
Other than to basically establish a cartel that's going to say we are going to divide up particular territories. I can see the merit in having that in terms of municipal elections, because in municipal elections, when you have all of the smaller parties that are contesting particular wards, then you end up effectively handing that ward to the ANC. That makes sense, because there you're drilling down to actually splitting the vote. But when you have proportional representation in the national parliament, it really doesn't make a difference. Because ultimately, as long as you're voting for anyone, besides the ANC. You're achieving the same goal. And, let's talk about the charter later.
For me,
You know, the what multi-party charter, as they
Mhm.
call it, is bad politics. The guys are spending all of this time, uh, nuts and bolts around how they're going to work this thing out. They're not spending their time getting voters to believe in who they are and what they stand for and convincing them to give them their vote. All that we see when we see multi-party charter conventions as they have them, and it's interesting that they went to have it in KZN, as you
Mm.
see at the moment, I think 5 or 6 parties
Mhm.
coming together to say, give us your vote and we're going to fight for who does what. This one seat, this is how we're
So
going to fight for the seat.
just to be clear, so there are 12 parties. There's a DA and Carter Freedom Party, Action SA, and then a bunch of the rats and mice ones.
And instead of being out there, I have not seen, over the weekend, Rise Mzansi came out with their People's Manifesto.
Mhm.
86 pages long. Uh, and we know that the EFF next month is going also to Moses Mabhida to launch their manifesto, and later, 2 weeks later, the ANC is in Moses Mabhida launching their manifesto. Inkatha will be launching. So we are seeing, but they're not out there talking to the voters. We spoke in the last hour about 800,000 matriculants. What are they saying to those matriculants to get them to give them their vote?
Let me just ask
They're
this.
holed up in a room with each other saying, this is
No.
how we're going to slice it up.
Because we criticize the opposition constantly for just being anti-ANC. And then when they sit down and they try to actually formulate policy and come to agreement on how the economy should work, which was the purpose of this meeting, what are they going to do? They worked on a collective strategy to fix the economy. That was supposedly what was meant to be achieved yesterday. Whether they had or hadn't, they had certainly a plan that they wanted to tell us about, which was the purpose of yesterday. So they're doing something that we've been
Gareth.
asking them to do. Now we're criticizing them for that.
Gareth, you've heard us say this before, that elections are like going overseas, right? You may know what you're going to do when you're on your Kontiki arriving in Paris and Brussels and all of those places. But if you don't get on the plane, all those wonderful plans mean fog all. That's what elections are like. So they can get together and have all of these plans. This is also what they're supposed to be doing in Parliament, by the way, right? But if they don't have sufficient representation on the other side of this, all their wonderful plans mean bagarol, as my uncle would say. And what they should be spending their time on now is convincing the voters to get out and vote for them.
All right, but I'm pointing out that we are speaking with forked tongue here. And correct me if I'm wrong, Canthan. We constantly go on about how the opposition is just anti-ANC and they're just out there campaigning the whole time and they don't tell us what their plans are. They don't have a message for the voters. And then when they come up and they craft a message for the voters, then we criticize them for doing that and not just going out and campaigning.
No, don't get me wrong. I wasn't criticizing them in the slightest, Gareth. I'm just saying that I don't see the point. I'm very happy for them to get together and formulate economic plans. And if they can actually reach cohesion around those economic plans, well, good for them. But it's very clear to me that the simple steps that you need to take in order to fix the economy is scrap broad-based Black economic empowerment, scrap the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, scrap the Labor Relations Act, and scrap minimum wage. And if you do those 4 things, our economy will fly through the roof within the space of a year. If people are actually talking about that level of practicality, which, frankly, is going to be hugely unpopular with everyone who currently benefits from those things. So Cyril is doing exactly the right thing right now from his perspective by saying correctly, we are paying you guys 350 Rand a month. And if the DA comes into power, they're going to take away that 350 Rand a month. Well, how do you actually end up coming with a bad medicine solution in that scenario that the masses are going to buy into. I don't really know the answer to that. But if they've come up with something, did you come across anything in terms of what they came up with that made sense to you, Gareth? Because I haven't actually had any details, so
No,
I don't want to
I mean,
shoot my mouth off for
what
no
all
reason.
they did, as far as I can tell, is that they've been discussing the options, and of course now they have to come to an agreement of some kind. But they were criticizing the ANC, as they always do, which is correct because they should be criticized. I wish that they could have said, and Virus says it here himself, thank you, Canton, for expressing something I struggled with. The MPC is useless. Just vote for not ANC. So really, I mean, does it come down to that?
Yes, basically. It's the most practical thing, But we've been saying on this show for the past 7 or 8 years, I would say, Gareth, that what we need to do as a country is to get the ANC below 50%, and that's the crucial thing that matters. Thereafter, everything will get fought in Parliament, and there'll be very public debates around how to fix particular problems, and then there'll be votes on particular pieces of legislation, and they will get passed based on.
And mind you, all
those.
of these parties have got their own charters. They've got their own plans. They've got their own policies. Those are the things that they should be out there using. And you see, the thing is, being a coalition of the disgruntled is also not a very smart strategy, because what they should be spending their energy on is telling people to vote for them. Telling people to vote for them. Getting together, they all have their own. The IFP, the IFP are going to have their own manifesto coming up in a couple of weeks, right? They're having their own manifesto coming up in a couple of weeks. These guys are not saying we're all merging and we're becoming one party, and everybody, these are the 20 things that each one of our parties have. This is where they cross each other. So these ones we're going to scrap, and all of us are going to be this one party. And this, because when you get your ballot paper, when the day to vote comes, when you walk into that voting booth, when you get your ballot paper, there will not be a place that says MPC, put your cross here.
So who has put a good case together for you to vote for them? Which party do you think at this stage, because nothing's perfect, and they've got only a few weeks, months.
I've only gotten to page 40 of the Rise Mzansi, and because Rise Mzansi is new, they are the ones that I've spent a lot of energy, because everybody else, you've seen their stuff. No one's coming out with anything drastically new from what they've always said. The DA isn't changing course. What they've said in the last election is probably going to be what is in their manifesto going forward. The ANC too, what's going to be in their manifesto is going to be the same that we have seen in the past, for the past 4 elections. The IFP, the EFF, all of them are going to have the same. I'm only on page 40 though, but 86 pages.
And what is it?
And
what does it say to you?
so far,
What
there's nothing new. So far, there is nothing new that they. And oh yes, somebody's just saying in the comments that Bosa is also going to be coming out. I know we had Musi Maimane here, and he's got a 10-point plan. So,
all right, but these are
Gareth,
all plans.
Gareth, to answer your question, so remember we've got this dichotomy between the national vote and the local vote. Interesting thing for me is if you draw a parallel between the stuff that you mentioned the Texas border, and we've actually got a similar scenario happening in our country, because the only party so far that's gone and actually tackled the crisis that we've got on the Limpopo has been Gayton's party.
Yes.
And there's interesting parallels that are happening out there. So, obviously I don't want to preempt this. He's going to be on the show next week, and I really want to hear what he's talking about. But frankly, right now, he's the only one who's actually saying anything at a practical level that's actually going to have an immediate impact on the welfare of the people on the ground. In terms of who we're going to vote for, I'm probably going to vote for the DA in the province. There's no way in hell that I'll vote for the DA nationally, because their foreign policy stance is going to very firmly keep us as vassal states of the Great West, and I don't see that as being good for us. I still don't have
Okay.
anyone to vote for at the national level. I suspect that
Oh.
if I was in KZN, I would vote IFP.
That's interesting. And I suppose also you've got to evaluate how you would if you're going to split your vote nationally and provincially, what you'd prefer to do with it. But I think also actions speak louder than words in much of this. And I like the fact that you brought up Gayton and the Limpopo border, because he was up there in a reflective jacket, like actually trying to arrest people, which is more than any of the other parties have done. But you could also point to the Western Cape. I was there again yesterday, and you see how it's run properly. I mean, it's not run perfectly, but it's run properly as compared to the rest of the country. Surely actions speak louder than words. And all of these manifestos and these plans and these multi-party charters and all the rest of it mean bugger all if they can't execute.
No, absolutely right. Would I rather live in a DA-run province than an EFF-run province? Absolutely. So, yes,
Well,
actions do speak
Just be
louder
clear,
than words.
just be clear, the EFF have not run anything, and I think that's on purpose. They don't want to actually govern. It's not a position that they want to be in. I don't see the EFF actually contesting on that basis at all. Most of their rhetoric is not around service delivery or doing things for people. Am I
Well,
wrong?
remember that in the municipal elections, the EFF have, to my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Phumi, I don't recall them winning a single ward anywhere.
No, they haven't.
All of their power comes from proportional representation votes in the municipalities, which is why they've been able to cause the type of chaos in Johannesburg.
eThekwini.
And eThekwini again, because they don't win wards, but on the proportional ballot, they end up, causing chaos.
So Phumi and I started the show this morning talking about what the parties are all projecting they're going to get. And Phumi said they all think they're going to get 15%, all these small parties. Are there any of these ones? Let's take the Patriotic Alliance at the bottom of the pile of actual contestable, 1 or more percent parties. The ones below that, Bosa, Rise Mzansi, Sara, which I've seen posters for. That's who is that? Colleen Makubele or something.
It's also a amalgamation of parties.
Okay.
Colleen
All
Makubele
right,
is
well,
just the face of it.
right. So there's other little parties in KZN who've always been part of the action there. But do you think any of these guys, if they don't form part of some bigger coalition and throw themselves under the aegis of another party, you think any of them have any effect at all? I mean, here's poor Phumi reading 40 pages of a manifesto that, they'll be lucky if they get 1%.
So, to the point that Koketso was talking about on the show last week, around people coalescing around highly localized stuff. And, we used the very specific example of Matatiel in KZN, where they basically formed that party and they campaigned on the basis of a single issue, which was the question of whether Matatiel becomes part of KZN or part of the Eastern Cape. And and so they were able to actually garner sufficient votes to actually get representation both in parliament and at a provincial level, and that actually ended up giving them influence. So to the point that you're asking as to what extent these smaller parties are going to be able to do anything, I think it's going to depend on the extent to which they're able to tap into the zeitgeist of particular communities. And, Gayton in Beaufort West being a very specific case in point. I think that becomes an object lesson in how to actually build a support base at a highly localized level and thereby project that into the national parliament. But in terms of the big picture, the ANC is obviously still going to be the biggest player. And the other players are going to be the DA, and it's going to be the EFF, and it's going to be the IFP. But really what we should be talking about at this point is what happens around what are these guys? MK. Yes.
Yes.
Because
Okay, well,
if we use the example of what happened in the split of COPE from the ANC back in the day, COPE actually ended up then with 20% of the seats in Parliament. People tend to forget that. I think that this is actually the MK is a COPE moment right now for the ANC, because it's very clear to me that Zuma has this incredible pulling power on the ground. There is a cult of personality around him, and I think he's going to take a significant chunk of the votes, and he's going to be a kingmaker in many parts of the country. So those are the ones that really matter. The extent to which the others are going to be able to grab a stake, I think that Gayton's actually going to fill the gap that was previously occupied by Patricia de Lille. I think that she's going to have a fall off in terms of support, because there was a betrayal of her voters, because she promptly ended up in partnership with the ANC and feathering her own nest. So those are the only players that really matter. The Freedom Front Plus, I think, has got a very firmly established niche, and I think they'll maintain their position. I don't know to what extent they'll grow it, because I don't see them having enough of a visible presence other than, to actually continue doing exactly what they're doing. It's not that they're seizing upon a particular area and trying to mobilize people around that, and to get them to say, look, we're doing this brilliantly out here, so here's why you should vote for us. I think Gayton, no matter what you may say, he's going to point to Beaufort West and say, look, we managed to make things work out here. So, yeah.
Pums,
Yeah, I
was
think
it a waste?
the opportunity. Say again, Gareth?
Was it a waste of time to read that Rise and Zanzi manifesto?
No, it's never a waste of time. Information and knowledge is never a waste of time. And what I was specifically looking for, a little bit, speaking about how Koketso sees how the electorate should be galvanized and what Kanthan's talking about now. A national election and a provincial election on a smaller scale really is about being able to seize issues that transcend my little corner of the world. Right? It's about being able to take the thing that can resonate with the highest number of people across the nation to be able to get them to believe and vote for you. And so where you have parties that are looking at very specific niche things that may speak very deeply to 10 people in Beaufort West or to 10 people in Matatiele, does not necessarily translate into a wave that can carry a party into the national arena. And where I think the parties that are going to be the big winners going into this next election are going to be ones who can see the big issue that affects the maximum number of South Africans and be able to articulate a messaging around that inspires South Africans to believe that they can make a change around it. That's where the ANC falls short right now, is people are saying, we have seen you in action for 30 years, and this is where we are. You may have been good in 1994, you may have been good in 2008, but today in 2024, you no longer serve my needs. What is sad is that most of those people who feel that way would rather stay home and not go and vote than vote for anybody else. That's actually the sad part. And unfortunately, because democracy requires participation of people first at the ballot, in order to feel like they were part of making this thing happen, so that it opens up the valve in terms of the areas where the pressure is building up in the system. We are seeing currently most South Africans opting out of that part of the system, and therefore we are seeing a rise in politically motivated demonstrations in various communities. We see political killings in other communities. We see a huge rise in that kind of unrest in the country because people are not believing in the democratic system as it is currently, because they don't go and vote because they are disappointed by the incumbent, but they feel there is nowhere else where they can turn to get solutions.
All right. I want us to use the remaining 5 minutes to just quickly refer to what's going on in America, because they are on the brink of something quite enormous, I think. This border crisis has now escalated and escalated. There are just millions of people who have poured over that border, not just porous, but just open in the last 3.5, 4 years, especially, but even before that. And we've seen all the stuff, the kids in cages. We've seen ordinary civilians who have guns trying to protect their private property if they live on the border, if they have farms on the border, and so on. And I see that this week, due to a Supreme Court decision, which has basically said the Biden administration can keep removing razor wire that private citizens and the Texas governor have been putting up along that border, the Supreme Court, which is supposedly very right-wing, have decided, no, those border fences, those wires can be cut down, forklifts can be moved in, et cetera, et cetera. It's an open rebellion that he's declaring here, because he said, and I'm going to quote just this part: James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the other visionaries who wrote the U.S. Constitution foresaw that states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats. That's Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, this morning, basically saying Texas has the right to defend itself. We will patrol our border, even if the federal government says they will not, and even if the Supreme Court says they will not. It's that idea that, as another commentator put it, the idea that the only reason we stop at a red light is because we assume the other people who are perpendicular to us will stop on their red light. The moment the people who are meant to stop at their red light stop doing that, they stop obeying the law, then what incentive is there for us to accept the green light for go and the red light for stop? We may as well not follow the law either.
I think one of the things that we need to point out in terms of the Supreme Court decision is that it was a correct decision, because most people say this is a right-wing court. It's an originalist court, and are national borders the purview of the federal government or of the state government? Well, national border is the purview of the national government, and yes, does the state, the city of New York, for example, as part of New York State, have the right to pitch up at JFK and erect a fence at passport control? The answer to that is no.
Yeah.
So,
then,
one actually, in terms of the legality,
then Greg Abbott is in open rebellion.
Yeah, so Greg Abbott is in open rebellion, but what Greg Abbott is doing, so the Supreme Court says correctly that the Biden administration has the right to take down the razor wire, but the Supreme Court did not say that Greg Abbott does not have the right to put up razor wire. And so what Greg Abbott is doing is he's replacing the razor wire as quickly as the Biden administration is taking it down.
This is such a waste of time.
No, it is a waste of time from the perspective of those of us who are sitting on the outside. But this actually is an existential threat to the integrity of the United States of America, because effectively what the Biden administration is doing is that they are importing voters. Because remember that once these people cross the border into the U.S., they don't need ID in order to be able to vote. And they're going to pitch up in all of these key constituencies that are going to be, and that's exactly the way in which the 2020 election was rigged, because of the fact that you had a larger number of people who voted in that election than they were actually registered voters in the United States, based on the fact that you could have mail-in ballots without voter ID, or you could pitch up without voter ID and actually vote. So, yes. This, might seem like it's trivial, but certainly I think Abbott is very clear that if the Republicans are going to survive, and indeed, if the United States, the version of the United States they believe in is going to survive, they're going to have to keep these migrants out.
I think it'll be the biggest issue around the elections. Do you agree, Pums?
I do not have sufficient information on this particular issue to comment. So I'm going to reserve my comment.
Fair enough. Probably the safest position. Canton, how's the book doing? People were commenting about your book, How to Fix South Africa. How's it going?
The book's doing well. Basically what I do is, people say, come and talk to us, and I pitch up at, their workplaces or their group, give them a talk and tell them what I'm trying to do, and sell the book. And yeah, that's my kind of primary method of going about marketing it. So it's eating that elephant one mouthful at a time, as I say.
Very good. Pums, we will see you next week, Thursday. Hopefully we'll have Gavin McKenzie on the show next Thursday. We've got a lot to talk to him about. And thank you both for your time today. That is the Burning Platform for this morning. We will see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.